out for the summer, right?
So I still work. Like right now, I'm still on, but my days are so much lighter. You know, like even next week, I don't have a lot of meetings on my calendar. Or maybe it's like 1 or 2 meetings so far. So we'll see.
All right. Ready? Is it recording? Oh, okay. Welcome to another episode of Romance Unleashed. My name is Mel, and I am your host. Today we have my good friend Jodi-Kay. Jodi is an avid reader, but she's also just like an overall fantastic, great human, and I thought she'd be a lot of fun to have on the podcast. So welcome, Jodi.
Thank you. Hi, Mel.
Hi.
Hi, everybody. I'm Jodi.
Tell us a little bit about you, Jodi.
So born in Jamaica, came here when I was about 10, 11 years old. I am an avid reader. Like, I enjoy reading, but I am a biased reader. I only read romance books.
Which is the only way. I mean, like, what else should we be reading?
Like, when I found...
self-help?
Exactly.
Financial?
Why do I need help
what?
for myself?
Right.
Why do I need financial help? Yeah. We all need financial help. But I am just... it's a go-to genre for me. I absolutely love it. I used to be a teacher for 9 years, teaching elementary school students.
I could so see that.
Sometimes I think about going back to it. My goal is to marry rich and then go back to teaching.
Right, because we don't pay teachers enough.
Absolutely.
So you have to marry rich in order to be able to be a teacher. It makes so much sense.
It has to. Have you ever watched those HGTV shows and the couples are on there and one is a kindergarten teacher and the husband is like tech guru?
Yeah.
Dreams, goals.
Yeah. So if you're a tech guru,
please.
Our girl is single.
Thank you.
So we will take applications after the podcast is over.
Please and thank you. But so I was a teacher. I was an assistant principal for 1 year. And now I work for an education company. So my goal is to just help students who need help. Students who are Black and brown, boys and girls who are sometimes overlooked. And they are behind in the system. So we make sure that they have intervention. So yeah. But in my spare time, I go to church. I'm a church girly. I love Jesus. I'm a romance girly because I love love. And I'm really big into community. I love friends, love spending time with people and getting to know people. Yeah. So yeah, I'm glad to be here.
What like got you started reading? Have you always been a reader?
So I want to tell this story, but it's so bad. Okay. I apologize to this library, but I used to steal books. Yeah, I know. When you think about what have you done in your past that you need forgiveness for?
She has found Jesus. So
I have found Jesus.
She has left the library stealing.
I have left it alone. I check out books like a normal human right now. But, our family didn't have it when I was growing up. And I had an aunt and she had a huge, just a dozen books from like V.C. Andrews, Nora Roberts, and I was obsessed. But then when I left, because I would visit her in New Jersey, when I left her, I came back. I'm like, well, where am I going to get these books? I don't have access to these. Yeah. So I go to the library and I would check them out, but I hated that I have to give them back. I was like, what if I want to read them again?
Right.
So I would like take them and not bring them back. And I had a lot of books, and then I felt guilty, of course.
Of course.
And then
because you are Jodi.
Because I am Jodi. So of course they ultimately would go back, but I really wanted them for myself. Yeah. So, and I had over 100 books.
What were your library fees like?
Oh my God. So much. I'm not a good patron of libraries. That's just not my ministry. To remember that I need to bring back books is a lot for me.
Yeah.
I don't feel like that type of pressure should be placed on me.
Yeah.
Other people definitely. It is unfair.
It's unfair. That's
I'm not
what God intended for you.
I'm not a fan.
And that's when you realize there's bookstores.
Exactly. I realized Barnes & Noble is a thing. And I started working and I started buying my own books. But I always came back to a love story. Something about life happens. And I'm not saying that the things that I read about in the books aren't real, but the fact that there's always a happy ever after is something that is so crucial to me because real love is tough.
Yeah.
It's a job, but it's a good job. It's the kind of career that you've been spending years trying to get to. Right. You finally get it and you're like, okay, I need to put in work to keep it. That's what real love is. And these books, they dabble in that, but then there's this, no, but everything's going to end up with us being together. And I just love that part. So
Yeah, there's like a safety in it.
yes, there really is a safety. Like you always know the guy is going to get the girl.
Was there someone in your family who like instilled reading into you, or is this something you picked up on your own?
I kind of picked it up on my own. I definitely had, my aunt, like I said, in New Jersey, she had the books. So no one ever said, Jodi, you need to read. I think if I'm remembering clearly, I think there was a summer, whether I was in middle school or beginning high school, they had 100-book challenge for the summer. And I was like, ooh, I want to read 100 books.
And the competitiveness.
The competitiveness. And I hate losing. I was just telling Mel, I'm a sore loser. I own my craft. I am a sore loser. And I wanted to read more than 100 books. So it was something that I even learned how to speed read. Because I was like, and I can retell what the book is about. I was like, ooh, that's good. So, yeah.
What age did you move here from Jamaica?
10.
Okay.
Yeah, 10.
Okay.
I want to say, fingers crossed, I remember. Yes. 10.
Yeah, we have similar stories in that. Like, I was about the same age, but same. Like, we couldn't afford to buy books, so we would use the library, and it would be the same thing.
Were you stealing as well?
I was not, but
that's good.
It did take me a while to get them back, which I think you could have said that instead of you were stealing from the library.
I didn't know we were judging.
No, we're not, because you just loved books so much, that you needed to keep them. And so, no, but I would check out like 30 or 40 at a time. Like I just like needed them. But similar to you, like I loved the love story, but it wasn't necessarily romance. Like I just always gravitated to any book that like had some kind of like, were they holding hands by the end of the book? Where there's like little looks? Was there like a possibility? And then later on, when I found that, like, hello, Melissa, there is a romance genre, I was like, oh, I'm never, like, why would I leave? Like, this is exactly what I like. Because I was even reading, like, Mary Higgins Clark.
Yes.
R.I.P. Queen. And I just found out that long ago she died. Like,
I did not know that she died.
Yeah,
until right now. Thank you for that.
Like, my girl. But we had series that, but her stories always had, like, there was always some kind of like back love story.
Yeah.
And I was like, hello, there's romantic suspense.
Yes.
And they're going to end up together. I don't have to guess if they're together. There's like an actual happily ever after. Again, back to safety. And I think when people ask, like, why is romance so popular? I think that, like, obviously, like, the commercialization of it is like the smut and like how spicy it is. But I think at the core of it, like, romance is just such a safe space for so many people. But it's also somewhere that, like, we can go to feel loved, especially in the times when maybe we're not feeling loved.
I agree 1,000% because I never knew what love looked like. So there wasn't an example that I had like, oh, well, this reminds me of my mom and my dad, or this reminds me of my aunt and my uncle. This reminds me of X and Y. It was through books that I learned, oh, this is what this can look like. Yeah. And even getting to the point where I had to kind of realize, oh, this is also an unhealthy expectation. Like, I know that all romances does not have a billionaire
who's gonna rescue you,
MMC who's gonna rescue me and take me away from everything. But like you said, it's the falling into it to know that it's a possibility to be loved, period. Right. And growing up the way that I did with all of, I've gone through very hard things in my life, and to get to the point where I would lose myself in a book because it was so not relatable, but just so inspiring.
And it's a form of escapism.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah.
So I completely agree with you, and the fact that you created like this safe space here.
Right.
So not only were you reading a book and you were like, there's safety in that, but then you've created, I don't know many romance bookstores. I don't think there are many that exist. And I remember finding out about this one before I knew Mel. And I was telling everyone like, there's a romance bookstore and everything in it is romance. And everyone's like, all right, Jodi. Cool off. But you come in here and you're like, oh my God, there's a little bit for everyone. And I think mainstream is spicy, smut, whatever that is.
Sure.
But there's so many other angles of just,
Absolutely.
there is also plus size representation now. There is different Black romances, Hispanic romances, Asian like there's a little bit, there's fiction, fantasy, there's so much for everyone that it's not this one little niche as much as it was before.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that the more popular it becomes, more people are able to kind of find like where they fit into it.
Yeah.
And I think especially when you haven't grown up, right? Like you said, you know, my dad died when I was young, but my mom didn't like start dating or like meet my stepdad till probably 10 years later. So I didn't grow up with, and my dad was so young when I died that like I didn't see a like mother and father like lovey-dovey. Like that's not what I saw. It's not what I grew up with. And then my mom was single for so long. That's just what I knew.
Yeah.
Until my stepdad came around, but I was already older. So like, and I feel like those early years is where you really see like
transformative
what that love is supposed to be like. And I think it's really special to be able to then find it later on. And again, right, like a billionaire would be great, but like I think at the core of it is finding someone who is like for you.
Yes. Who sees you.
Yeah.
You know, I think one of the active conversations that I've been having now with friends is, what do I want a love to look like? And one of the things that is so constant in these books, and it's something that I want, is a love that is out loud, a love that is unapologetic, a love that holds your hand, a love that challenges you. And that's what I see in these books. And there's sometimes where I'll start a book and I'm like, oh, no, she's too weak, because I also want her to be relatable to me.
Right.
You know, the man can be whatever.
Right.
But I want the main character, the female main character, I want her to be strong and sometimes independent, but also knowing or wanting a soft love.
Right.
You know, that knows that she is the one. So
Yeah.
I completely understand.
And
I
I
completely
think-
agree with that.
I think soft love is I think for a lot of women who are very like independent, very strong, finding someone who they're able to like let down their guards with, to be able to be soft, is
Hard.
huge. I mean, it's very hard to find.
Yeah.
And so like you being able to give me the space so that I can be soft because I am always the opposite is so huge for anyone who's always carrying everything.
Yes, agree. And I'm a firstborn daughter to my mother, so I know I put everything on my back. So when I'm looking for a partner, that's exactly what I'm looking for, is a partner. So when I'm reading books, I'm looking for partnership in the books.
Yeah.
But of course, I'm also a girl. And there's something about a man who's like, no, you need to eat this. And I'm like, oh my God, you do need to eat that. So I want a little bit of both. And that's where it goes to, again, what is unhealthy expectation? Just because I read this doesn't necessarily mean I want this thing in my life.
Right.
So
And I think that this is kind of where some of the romance critique comes in, with especially when we're looking at like darker themes or morally gray, right? Like someone perhaps that's our age or is just in that like has a more mature mind, will know, right? Like love this shit in a book, but this is not, my partner should not be hacking into my work cameras to check in on me.
I mean, if he loves you,
you know,
should he not?
but you could recognize when, you know,
Yes.
And so I think sometimes there could be some blurred lines in like, what are you actually accepting though?
Yeah.
Because that's not what I think the power in like morally gray or dark romance is that the woman has the power.
Yes.
Right. And so I think if that's not what's happening in real life, then there's like a different conversation.
I agree. And I think, you know, I have a really good best friend and he knows a lot of the things that I've gone through. And I remember when I was telling him some of the books that I was interested in, he's like, but you've been abused. You've been through trauma. How are you able to read this and not break down? And I was talking to you before we started this. I refuse to let what was taken from me still be held over me.
I love that.
You know what I mean? I refuse for it to be sex was taken from you. Your consent was taken from you. So now I don't express consent by choosing. You know what I mean? So I refuse for that to be held. And I work through it. Come on, therapy is real. Jesus is real. So I try to make sure that I am getting the resources that I need. But I don't want that. And I know for so many people, that is their reality. That is their truth. That is their narrative. And I don't want it to be mine. So I have found
there's power
love
in
for
that,
this.
right? There's a power in choosing where that stops you.
Yes.
And I think too, like you said, right? Like whether that's your relationship with God or another being or, therapy, I think that's in your own power to work through those things. I mean, there's a huge conversation on like trigger warnings should be there be in books. And I completely think that they should be, because then you have the choice whether you want to embark on that journey, if it's going to trigger something in you.
Agree.
And if you have the ability to be able to work through that trigger, right? But I do think that the more like you're exposed to the trigger in safe ways, right? Like in a book, for example, for me anyway, has been a form of healing too. Because the more you encounter it, the more you're able to work through things, or at least that's what has happened for me.
Seeing something on a movie is different than reading about it in a book.
I think so too. And I think it's because in a movie, right, the scene was already created for you, where in a book, you choose
exactly
what that scene looks like.
Exactly.
And I also think that a lot of these stories are written not through the male gaze.
Correct.
Right? And so where movies are usually
directed
through the
by
male
men.
gaze. And so I think that's also what's important, because in writing dark romance or in reading dark romance, I think that you have like an agreement with the reader of what you're embarking, or as an author, right? Like you agree with the reader what you're embarking on. And I think I can only assume that I think if you're writing anything with triggers like that in a book, that it also gives you that power back, because you're choosing how it happens.
Exactly.
Right.
1000%. The other thing that I was thinking about as you were talking about, I grew up in a time where there were no trigger warnings in books. Like, I don't know if you guys know V.C. Andrews, but that was the most taboo reading of romance that I had ever encountered. And that I imagine that nowadays would come with a trigger warning.
Right.
Like,
oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Completely.
Yeah.
But it was so, I was at a space in my life where back then I didn't need it. And I think that helped. There's an active conversation that where we are now, or how people are growing up now, everything needs to be censored. Everything needs to be like, you need to front load so much to people.
Right.
But it hinders sometimes us from kind of toughening up,
growing.
And that's problematic to say, but it's one of those things where for a long time, I owned being a child of molestation because I was actively going through healing. Like, it wasn't something that I put on the back burner. It wasn't something that I regressed. It wasn't something that, this never happened to me. It was something where I was actively aware that this was happening, and I was actively aware that I didn't want it to hold me back. And I think that sometimes, there's a time and a place when a trigger warning or like censorship is necessary. Completely agree. But I definitely think about that more often. Like, how different would the world be if there was less? But
right. And I think there's a difference too between something like trigger warning, so that you have that, versus I think kind of what you were pointing out, like the just kind of like keeping people from experiencing things, because unfortunately as humans, right, until we don't experience something, like my mom says this all the time, like I can give you all the advice in the world, but until like you don't experience it for yourself, you're not gonna know what that is. And I think that is a lot of scenarios that you, if unless you go through it or like are presented with these different things, it's not something that you are going to be able to work through because you don't have the tools to.
Right. Yeah. I always say your testimony sets you free. So if you're keeping something constantly hidden, there's a shame that you're putting to your story. And your story does not need shame. Your story needs freedom. Your story needs to be brought to the light so you can be free. And I think that we hold a lot inside because it's like, well, no, I don't want to, you know, I don't want to trigger anyone. And the goal is never to trigger anyone. I feel like this podcast will probably need a trigger warning on it for some folks. But it's one of those things where we learn, right? Time and place for everything. So, but that is something that I've thought about more as I have come into getting older and just owning my story. No one gets to tell my story but me. And we look at it through books. I love reading a book where I'm like, oh, this character gets me completely. Oh, they've been through the same thing that I've been through. And at the end, they come out on top. That to me is power in that. So
and I think too, I think for anyone listening to this, right, like I think that this also comes from a long journey of like therapy and healing. And it's, I don't know if it's, I would like to say it's a more privilege to take, right? Because you've been able to work through that. And I feel similarly, 5 years ago, I was not where I am at now with the traumas that I have experienced. And that is a privilege that I have been able to, one, have access to the tools and been able to work through that. So I feel like if you're listening to this and there's shit you're still working through, right? Like that's totally okay because no one can tell your story but you.
Agree.
And no one owns that story but you. So if it's not the time for you to own that, it's not the time. You will come to it when you need to. At your own pace, you know, and I think that is the power.
Exactly. No one told me it is time to do this, but me. And I think that makes me feel like such a baddie. You know what I mean? The fact that I can sit here and where I once cried and said, why me? There's a power in even deciding to read the books that I read. You know, there's still that, do I? And I'm still actively going through that, but I love a good story. I love a good getting lost in a book. I love a good story. And that comes from where I feel at peace, because this has always been my stuffed teddy bear. A really good book is a good stuffed teddy bear for me. So
I love that analogy because I feel the exact same way.
Yeah, it's
like
a stuffy.
That's what it is. Talking about stuffies, but not really. There was this Abby Jimenez told us the story once that she had a reader who told her she placed her favorite book that had her favorite like male character under her pillow every night and like slept through it, and like she would pray or whatever, like that's the man that she would find. And so when she found him, she brought him to like a signing and like introduced Abby to him, and I was like, damn,
that's the power of manifestation. People.
So if you know, there's a pillow trick in there.
Oh my god. See, I've never thought about that. I have written out, I do have a list of like qualities that I want in a person, but also leaving space where it needs to be, that this person can come in different forms. And I always say this, the season that you're in now, the person you're going to get may not match this season. You know, you're going to get sent a person who is going to be for the season when you are a mother, when you are going through hardship, when you're losing a parent. The season that you're in right now, you may meet someone and you're like, I don't get it with this person. But God doesn't send you the partner for this season. You get that partner who is for 2 seasons from now. And in that season, you're going to be like, oh, that's what this was for.
That's why I have this person.
Exactly. Now, all the other stuff, I believe in compatibility. I believe in attraction, right? And I think about that when I'm reading a book. I want to be attracted to this person that I'm reading in the book. Like, is he protective? Is he kind? Is he compassionate? Is he dominant in a sense that, you know, he understands a healthy alpha? Healthy alpha. Healthy alpha.
A therapized alpha.
A therapized alpha. You know, a work in progress male who knows who he is. Is he all of these things? I need my book to be like that, because sometimes when it's too toxic, I'm like, okay, yeah, no, I can't fall for this guy. I can't. Even if I want to, I can't. I
think that's my problem with like bully romance.
Yes.
That I'm like,
yes, agree. But I love a good enemies to lovers.
I love a good enemies to lovers. It's we'll do a fuck, marry, kill at the end, and it's usually tropes.
Yay!
And yeah, enemies to lover. I don't think I've had anyone kill off enemies to lovers yet.
No, I won't.
I've had people kill off second chance, and that really hurts my little second chance heart.
Oh,
I know. As a Cancer, which we are in Cancer season, by the way. Welcome to Cancer season.
I'm gonna kill off second chances. I know, but we're not there yet. We're not there yet.
Anyway, me and Jodi met. Have you watched what's that TV show?
Which one?
With the basketball?
No, nothing like this. No, it's with she's like dating the rabbi. Oh my gosh. Nobody Wants This.
Basketball show?
No,
It's called Nobody Wants This.
Nobody Wants This. Okay, so if you watch Nobody Wants This, you know the girls in the stand drinking wine because men are playing pickup basketball or like they're men's basketball leagues.
Yes.
That's how me and Jodi met.
Yes.
I stumbled into a basketball arena once upon a time, and her and her other friend Jazzy were just like,
come sit with us.
you want wine? And so now when the boys play in their basketball leagues, we drink
cheer.
wine.
We cheer and we drink wine.
We cheer and we drink wine.
I love a good
know.
cheering for basketball.
I know. And it's really like, I think it's really like interesting how men make friendships in leagues.
Yeah.
Like that's so fascinating to me. Like how, like, because I am not like that. Like I'm not, like, sure, if Jassy puts together this like mixed kickball league or whatever, like sure, I'll do it.
Yeah.
But would I willingly seek out
Right.
a kickball league for myself?
Absolutely not.
No, I'm going to book club.
No.
You know, like, no. Like, is there a wine night? Like, are we drinking at each base? Like, is there a drinking game attached to kickball?
And even if there was, gonna be honest, I want to thank God for no more FOMO and no more people pleasing, because I will not join that kickball league. I will not. Oh, I'm glad that we have this on the podcast.
No.
But I will cheer you all on.
Cheer.
Come on.
No,
I will cheer.
I mean, it's going to be...
I'm going to come to each game and I'm going to... Will I actively participate in it?
No.
No. But I want to see you guys do it.
I just don't think it would be as fun if you're not on there with us.
What are you talking about? Have you heard me in the stands? You're going to have the time of your life.
Yeah.
You better get that ball.
But you could be like our Brad. You know?
I am going to be your Brad from the stands. I'm going to be right there cheering you guys on. But I think that's
interesting.
The really good thing about our friendship too with basketball is that we're peeling back the layers and we have gotten to know each other in not just basketball. That's not the one thing that just seals us together. Now we're reading the same books, or we're interested in books, or watching games together outside of watching the guys play basketball, talking about our days. You know, Mel is amazing because I really feel like she keeps that group just...
I try.
You keep us going.
I try.
And I love your questioning of just like, what's the one good thing that you want to take away from this week? And you need friends that are like that. And I think as a woman who's had a hard time with friendships, having people who are intentional teaches me how to be intentional.
Yeah.
So there are times where, you know, my friends say it all the time, like, Jodi, when we're in person, I know you love me. But man, I cannot tell when we are over the phone because I don't reply to text that much. I am just always running and going. But when I'm in front of you, you are the light of my life.
Right.
And that just is what it is.
Right.
So the fact that you've created this space where you kind of like help us to be more in, at least for me, I'll only speak for myself. It helps, and I'm grateful for that. So thank you. You're an amazing human.
Thanks, I try. So I am the Brad of our group chat.
Yeah.
Is what we're
Yes.
getting to. Okay.
Shout out to you, GM.
I'm gonna text that on the thread. I have just been informed that I am the Brad of this group
You are.
chat. If we need
You
jerseys,
keep us together.
let me know.
Please give us a jersey. Baseball, please. Baseball jersey.
So you talked a lot about your church girly earlier on, and I'd love to talk about how your reading, don't want to say like correlates, but I guess intersects with your religion, right? Because I think from what I've seen over the years and being in the romance community is that there's a like step, like you can't be religious almost, and it's not that no one's explicitly saying it,
Right.
but I feel like there's conversations surrounding it where it's kind of like ew.
Yeah.
And I think it's so interesting as I've always gone through phases where I guess what I will say is that I've always had my own relationship with God. And whether that looked like attending church every Sunday or whether that was like I pray every morning, like that's always been my own relationship, but I've never really been outspoken about it for a couple of reasons. One, there's so much hypocrisy within religious sectors,
Right.
in like how we treat people and then what your Sundays look like, right? And I feel like if the two are not, you know, and I guess for me for a long time it was like I don't ever want to be a misrepresentation of what, like I don't want to be the reasons other people have given me to not be outspoken about God, right? And then I kind of went through this whole like sexual empowerment, like the steam box reading, and I just did not know how the two intersected for me. Like I knew I was this one thing, but I also knew that I was in this other community where these things were so important to me. But then there was just also so many other things, like, you know, finding the book community for me was really feeling at home for the first time, right? And I was like, that was all for a reason. And I was my journey here wasn't through me. Right. And so like, I feel like a lot of people, maybe I am just a lot of people, but I think a lot of people struggle with like the empowerment of like your sexuality, you as a woman, et cetera, and loving God.
Right.
Or being a woman of God.
Yeah.
Right. And so I always think it's really interesting when you meet someone who is able to embrace both.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'd love for you to talk a little bit about that.
To unpack, I can't speak for the majority, but I think I love God more than I love romance books.
Okay.
And I think that's a good place for me to start. So my goal is to be obedient in what he calls me to be, who he calls me to be, do what he says that I am to be. I also understand that we have all fallen short of the glory of God. That's just biblical. So my goal isn't to revel in, oh, well, you know what? God's got me. I can fail. I can drop it. I can do whatever I want. But I do know that even here right now, I'm constantly like, does this feel right? And there are books where I will not finish because I'm like, something there's a spirit that I feel in me that I'm like, I can't finish that book. I have no, but then there are other books where I'm like, oh my God, this book, it's so powerful. It's so beautiful. And I can see God in the book.
Thank you, Kennedy Ryan.
Yeah. Kennedy.
Front and center, please.
Kennedy, come to the chat. Come here now. Speak for yourself. But truly, even Jennifer Hartman, she wrote this book, Still Beating, and it rocked my world just to see how in it a person goes through these trials and comes out on the other side. You know, in Priest, Sierra Simone, when I read that, he is literally going through the same pull that I felt myself going through. So I'm like, here I am supposed to be this woman of God, and this is how I have an ideology of how I need to look. And I think what I've learned is, well, what does God say about me? Because I'm listening to what a lot of people will say about me, and I'm listening to what I will say about me. But what does God say about me? Well, he says that I need to exhibit the fruits of the Spirit. So even when I'm giving myself grace and I'm toying through like, okay, is this good? Should I really be in this arena? But this is the only arena that I feel compelled to. I really feel like we have to look at God bigger than we look at the romance, because he knows our heart, and he will put it on our spirit where we need to move. But how much are we listening to him? And we can't rely on other people to say, well, that's not right, that's not wrong. Everybody's going through different convictions, different shames, different just relationships with God. People have been not church hurt, people hurt. I want to just make sure we say that. You are not church hurt. And I'm not on this podcast to preach to you, but you are not church hurt. You are people hurt. People came and people showed you that this is not the way that you should be. And that's not necessarily always true. So I think when it comes to being a God girly, a church girly, a woman of God, that's my first relationship. So there are times where I'm not even in a reading season, where I won't even be reading romance books, just because I may be getting so lost in it that I'm like, okay, well, I need to have a more Bible season. And then there are romance stories in the Bible. Like, I can find the romance in anything. I can find the romance in everything. So it's just that I'm still juggling it. So I don't have the answer of how do I balance sexuality and God. It's something that I'm still finding the balance with. But I think the thing that I hold in my heart is I love him more than I love my own fleshly need of this thing. So if I feel like, oh, well, you know what? I want to do this. That's a feeling.
Yeah.
That's a feeling. And I try not to operate in just my feelings. I try to operate in what the word of God says. Does that contradict? Because the Bible talks very plainly about remaining pure, remaining holy. And there are times where I miss the ball on that. But I think sometimes people are looking at us that we need to have it all together. And there's a shame that comes with that. There's condemnation that comes with that. I've been a part of so many groups on Facebook, and there have been group comments that are like, I'm a Christian and I'm reading romance. Am I horrible? And you'll see people with tens of thousands of comments like, I'm going through the same thing.
Wow.
You don't think that God sees that, and God is like, wow, 10,000 women. You think he's just turning us all away? So I whole heart to that even if it's a struggle, I believe in the God that I serve. And the same way where he's like, where I am like, should I be drinking today? Should I be drinking wine when I go to basketball? Because if we're being honest, according biblically, I shouldn't be doing that either. But I know my tolerance. I know my limits. I try not to teeter so much where I'm like, well, I can do it and then step back. I know I try to have a good surrounding system of what it is that I can tolerate. And I always try to have the end goal in mind. Am I loving God and am I loving others? That's the basis of where I'm basing it on. And am I being obedient when it's time for me to be called to do something, even being here, right? Coming here and having this talk is really big, because I am 1,000% putting it out there that I am a Christian and I read romance books. They're the same 10,000 women who are like, oh my God, I'm going through that same struggle. There are hundreds of thousands of people who are like, oh my God, then you're not a woman of God, then you're not this. And how easily would that be to turn me away from God?
Right.
How easy could that be? So
Right.
that to me is like, that's distraction. So I like I said, it comes back to, I love God more than I love romance
Yeah.
books. I love God more than I love my sexuality. I love God more than I love sin. Like, I love God, and
Right.
he is constantly leading me. So I don't have all the answers.
Yeah.
I am not walking in anyone's shoes. Everyone deals with different convictions at different times. But you know what? I believe that God works it all out as long as we are saying, God, I'm open.
Right.
You know, I'm open to hear you.
Right. And I think to parallel, right, like there's, while like in this case we're talking about romance, I think that anyone can kind of plug that into anything that is considered sin, right?
Yeah.
And how you, I think there's more weight in how you carry your life, how you carry your heart and people and your relationship with God than anything else.
Yes.
In my opinion.
Yes.
And so I'm sure that for this, there's a bunch of people who probably struggle with the same thing because it doesn't feel like it's a world where like the two can collide.
Yeah. And where like you go back and forth and it goes back to what I said earlier. What you keep hidden, you keep in shame. So to me, I won't hide this. You know what I mean? I remain teachable. I remain where people want to have a conversation and, hey, we want to talk about it. I will always be open to that, but I will not keep this hidden. My love for romance books, it is what it is. My pastor, she knows. She's like, I know you love a good romance.
Well, you know, there's a church, I think it's called Shell Church. It's here in Deerfield. They're newer. And it's been some time since I've gone to that specific church. But what really drew me to them was the first time I went, like someone turned around and was like, "You own Steamy Lit." And she was like the pastor's brother's wife or something like that.
Yeah.
She's like, me and like the pastor's wife love it there. Like we come all the time. And that I think healed something for me. It was like you are still welcome here. And that like that's nothing, girl. Like come be here with us. And I like that was such a great experience to like be welcomed back into like me finding church and figuring that out. And I'm still kind of in that process of like, what church do we belong to type thing.
City lift.
And where do we, I know, I told Tev we have to give it a try. But you know, figuring out like where that home is, that was such a like great, like,
and I don't believe anything happens on accident. No. Right? So to me...
No, like the fact that like the person who was sitting right in front of me, it was like one of the times when it was like, oh, turn around, turn your neighbor or something. And she turned around, she was like, oh my God, you own Steamy Lit.
Yes.
And like, I could have picked any seat in that church and like that happened
exactly
for a reason. And like, I hadn't realized how much that like healed me in my relationship with God and like trying to combine those two together.
Yes. Like God can use anything. God can use anything. Like, and I think there's power in realizing like, okay, right now, and I don't even want to say you don't have it right, because right now you have it right. You are in it. And God can say, if you can say yes to me and you can learn who I am, I promise you're going to know that everything that I have for you is for your good. And that to me gives me goosebumps. It makes me know that, okay, I may not have all the answers. I may be doing something incorrect. I may be dropping the ball here or there, but I know that my focus is on him. Right. So I know that he has something good for me. He has plans for me. So to go into an atmosphere, and I even thought about like how we met. Like I remember you were like, oh, I own a bookstore. And I was like, a woman owning a bookstore? What bookstore do you own, woman? And she was like, I own this romance. See me lit? She didn't finish. And again, that was me as I'm getting back into the church, back into ministry. And I found you then kind of to show you as well, like God is saying, here's a woman who's going through the same thing as you. look at how
Right.
I can use her.
Right.
Look at how I'm already using you.
Right.
So I think, I don't know, there's something beautiful in knowing that everything is for the good. All of this is, we get really, as people, we are hyper fixated on us and how it works for us and how it's good for me, but your yes to this helps another person.
Right.
We talk about that all the time, that you taking the step forward to say yes to something is a blessing for another person who's listening to this and is having that conflict of, oh my gosh, I just read A Court of Silver Flames, naughty girls. Okay, I think it's A Court of Silver Flames. Is that what it's called?
That's the fifth book.
Yes, that orange book.
Well, I mean, I struggled when I read Priest. I had to put it down and come back to it because, like, as a Catholic growing up girly, and like this was at a point in my life where I have devoured hundreds of romance books. So I was so taken aback by the way that I like clutched my pearls.
Yes.
When I read Priest, I was like, I am not a pearl clutcher, but here I am. And I had to like pause and like unpack and like continue reading. And I think similarly to that, like when I talked to Sierra Simone a few weeks back, like having her talk through how like Priest came about too, like it was fantastic.
Yeah.
It's fantastic.
Yeah. It sets you free. You know what I mean? And I think going back to the original thing of what is a romance book for you.
Right.
And it's one layer of your person. And what is the other layer? Because for me, I'm a child of God first. So if God gives me that season and he's all like, sis, you're going to have to put down all of those books. It's going to hurt because, God, I don't want to read a self-help. I do not want to read a self-help. I read the Bible back and forth twice.
I don't
do
read
not
a
want
murder
to
mystery.
read.
I don't want to read a financial book.
You know what I mean?
Like,
but then I know that he knows that I love reading. You know what I mean? And I know that he knows that I can find something that is going to still give you what it is that you need.
Right.
I can shift your taste.
Yeah.
I'm putting it back on him so that way I'm doing my part and I'm allowing him to do his. So when I think about how this all needs to look, you know, and a lot of people, we're still trying to figure this whole spirituality thing out. We're still trying to figure out who God is. And as we're maneuvering through people hurt and, well, you know, I'm this, that's fine. But I think knowing God for yourself and knowing him, so not just the thought of who he is, but what does the word say about him, it opens you up to a whole brand new horizon. Like, oh, this shame that I'm feeling is not even from him.
Right.
Like this thing that I'm feeling is not even from him. No. He wouldn't put that on
it's
me.
It's usually from society. Who has expectations on what like God, woman is supposed to be like,
exactly.
Right?
So once you start to kind of shift gears there, and that's where I am. And I like being there, you know? Like I said, there are books that I'm like, yeah, I can't finish that. And then there are books that I'm like, I devoured that.
Yeah.
And that was so good.
Yeah.
And it was so healing. And I cried and I laughed. And I'm like, oh, I want to read it again. And again and again. So I just, you know, I'm just slowly walking through what it means to be a Christian girly who loves a good romance. So.
Do you reread books?
You know, not very often. I think Harry Potter is probably a book that I've reread. And even then, I only reread the first one. But if it's a really good book, I'm sure that I would. Kennedy Ryan, I would reread your books. Revive Me.
J.L. Sears.
Yes. I would reread her book.
Yeah.
You know? So there are certain books that I would. But then there are a lot of books that I know. I can look at them and I remember the plot. I remember. I'll probably skim through like Anna Hung's book, Twisted Hate. You know, Enemies to Lovers.
Joshin.
Come on. I am a teacher by trade, so I annotate in my books. I highlight. I'm like, oh, that's a really good part.
Yeah.
Oh, that was really good. Such good symbolism.
And now you don't have to give them back to the library like that. You know?
You all know my story.
I will say that I think I'm not a rereader mostly because like FOMO, I have not given that up yet. And like there's so many books that I need to read before I die.
Yeah.
So like I can't.
That's true.
However, I would say that something like a JL or something like a Kennedy,
Yeah.
my reason for rereading it is because nothing can bring those feelings out the way their writing can. And so I think that is why I would read it. Like,
Agree.
the way that hits you,
Yeah.
like that feeling doesn't just come
Agree.
from anywhere.
Agree. And that Jennifer Hartman, Still Beating.
Still Beating.
I would reread that book.
Have you read Real yet by Kennedy Ryan?
No.
Oh, you're gonna love it.
I am.
Oh, you're gonna love it.
It's been now on my list. I've been hearing good things, and funny enough, I've seen it, and I'm like, Hollywood, I don't know, but I've been seeing it more and more, and I'm like, why is it continuously coming up?
So good. It's such a good book.
Okay,
Yeah.
it was.
Okay, what have you been reading lately and loving?
And loving. Ooh,
Yes.
that's a good pivot.
I'll ask you about it.
Thank you. I finished Abby Jimenez just for the summer. Such a cute book. So adorable. Oh my God. So sweet.
Yeah.
Very, and totally not my speed. Because it was very vanilla, very soft, very cutesy, very demure. I was like, who am I?
So this is gonna kind of go back to like the power of God in a sense,
Yeah.
but is it just for the summer? No, it's yours truly.
Uh-huh.
Yours truly. I had received an arc of it like forever ago, and I kept putting it off. I was just like not, and which is unusual for me because I love Abby. So usually, if I get an early copy, I'm devouring it like right then and there. I probably had it for like 2 months before I decided to get divorced.
Okay.
And that was the weekend I decided to open the book. And when I tell you like the healing, because have you read yours truly?
No.
So she is someone who was married and is now trying to find love like post. And like she's gone through these things. And it was just like such like a perfect moment to remind me that like you're gonna be fine. Like you're gonna be fine. I got you. And like I'm putting this in your hands so that you can read that you are gonna be okay. Like that was such like I think I've told the story a couple of times, but like that was such a powerful like moment of like the right time for something that I absolutely needed.
Yeah.
But anyway, just for the summer, it's so funny.
It's so cute. And it's like you said, this is the power of God too. Like for these other books that I've been reading, I just can't connect. I also finished Can't Get Enough by Kennedy Ryan, which I ate that up. Left no crumbs. I think the only hiccup, Kennedy, that I have, I'm sorry, is she is me, but I want kids. And I thought when I was reading it, I was like, oh man, how come she doesn't want kids? But then there's so many women in the world who are like, I would rather not. I'd rather have a puppy.
So you know what's really funny? When I read the first 2 books, in the eras I was in, I was Hendrix.
Yeah.
Like I was like, and I could not wait for Hendrix's book to come out because I was like, finally a book about a woman who is in her career, is in her bag, like business first. I don't want a family. I don't like my family's my partner. Like I have all of these other things. And then in my real life, I'm now going through another era where the person I'm with, I would want to have kids with.
Right.
And so for me, Hendrix didn't hit as hard as I know it could have 2 seasons ago.
Yes.
But even reading that was, again, like the power of healing, right? It was like this healing part that was like, and if you ever go back to that season, it's okay. And I saw so many women talking about it on like threads and like just social media in general, like how much they needed to read something like that because of the pressure society puts on you.
Agree. 1000%. And as a woman who is independent, you know, I'm in my 30s. I'm 34, about to be 35. And I'm not going to say I expected that I would be a mother right now, or I expected that I would be a wife right now. But it's something that it's on my heart.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, is this what it's going to look like when I'm reading Hendrix? Because I'm like, well, she's kind of like me. She has her stuff together. She's independent. But I'm like, but I want kids. Like I do, right? Like that's okay. So then it goes back to, well, how much are you idolizing this book? Where you're like, I can read the story and I can see a good story and know, even though I see myself here, it's not necessarily me.
Right.
Like my story can be written differently.
Right.
And I think that's the power of Kennedy Ryan, is that it can be a good story and you can relate to it and it still not be
Absolutely.
everything that you want it to hit
Yeah.
as. So
Yeah.
I loved it. So those two are books that I read and loved.
Okay.
Now, what I'm currently reading is Caught Up. And I don't know. I mean, I just started reading it, and before that, I was reading Mink by Sophie Lark. And these books are now about sex workers. And I think maybe that's where I'm like, I don't know. I'm not connecting. And I don't know if maybe because I'm not a sex worker. I don't know.
You know who does a really good job with sex work? Sierra Simone and Julie Murphy have their like Christmas Holly Jolly Molly. I don't even know what they're called right now. Jingle bells, jingle balls, jingle something. Anyway, maybe it's Jingle Mingle and not Jingle Balls.
The fact that
It's
you said jingle balls.
I mean,
is
honestly, I wouldn't put it past both of them. But I had never read a book that taught me so much about sex work, the industry, like the unfairness, like wage gap, like all of these things. They do a really good job kind of putting it out there. And it wasn't a book, for me, it was more a book to read for funsies because it wasn't something that I could connect to the characters.
Yeah.
But I felt so knowledgeable after that about like sex work and how much injustice there is behind the different companies that are out there that it was like incredible in that sense.
And I believe it. It's just at that season where I'm just not connected. And one of a really good book that I read quite a while back when I started getting back into reading was Hunting Adeline and Haunting Adeline. And these are a little bit darker, but one of the...
A little bit.
Just a smidge. Just a smidge dark. But there's such a golden retriever theme of, you know, the main male is trying to stop like the sex trade. And I thought that was so beautiful. Like, he's such a good man.
Romance is not dead. Chivalry is not dead.
Sure, he stalked her, but he wanted to protect her.
Yeah,
like,
obviously.
You guys get it. Obviously. Yeah. Come on.
All right, so for our last question.
Yes.
Fuck, marry, kill.
Yes.
Any trope.
Any trope. Remind me of the tropes again. So I know enemies to lovers.
Enemies to lovers.
Friends to lovers.
Second chance.
Arranged marriages. Lovers. Okay. Forbidden love.
Or taboo. Brother's best friend.
Secret baby. Wow, there's so many tropes. You know what? Can I kill 2 of each?
No, you can just
because 3. I really want to kill age gap.
Crazy.
I know.
Okay.
I think it has something to do, and I'm so sexist because I can read a woman being older and the man being a little bit younger, but I cannot get into the man being a 40-year-old and he's fallen in love with the 20-year-old or 18-year-old. Like, I can't. Blame it on experiences.
You didn't like Birthday Girl?
No. Okay. Sorry, Pen. Right. Sorry, Penny. No. I want to kill age gap. I feel like we should all collectively as a unit kill age gap. And I'm going to also... I know she said not to do it, but I'm doing it anyway.
I am so unwell.
I'm killing why choose. I can't with the why choose.
No, it was second chance.
No, the trope, why choose? Where the woman gets to have all the partners that she wants. Pick one.
Well, at least it wasn't second chance, because I was about to be like, you really don't know your
No,
friends.
No. I'll leave. The reason why I'll keep second chance, because I think of Before I Let Go with Kennedy Ryan and Restore Me by JL. That was my book.
Restore Me
wrecked me.
Was so
wrecked me. I'm marrying, right? So it's kill, marry, and love in a casual way.
Okay.
I am marrying enemies to lovers. It's something about me disliking you, and some of the authors, they get it and some don't. Where they don't like each other.
They don't really have a real reason to like not like each other.
Exactly.
But when it's like true, like I despise you, but bend me over.
Yeah. What she said.
Elite.
Come on.
Elite.
Chef's kiss.
Yeah.
And then they grow. I think that's the thing that I'm finding now with books, with the plot, is that there's a lack of growing to it. It's like in one chapter they hate each other, and then chapter 2 they're immediately loving each other, and it's like, but how? Remember, we hated her. How long have we hated him? Like, I need at least 5 chapters and banter. Enemies to lover should have really good banter. So I'm gonna marry that, because when it's done well, it is done to perfection. And casual romance.
That's people's usual enemies to lover.
I know.
Yeah.
Which I don't
I
even
get, because there's like a little, like twisted hate. Like.
Yeah. Casual, I would say friends to lovers.
Okay.
Because it's like, so you've been playing us this entire time. So you're not really friends. You've loved each other. And it's I never knew. I looked at you and
one day.
Just one day.
And I looked into your eyes and I'm like, where the fuck has this energy been for?
And again, as a person, I just told you guys I'm a Christian girly, so God will do that, right? There's so many things where it's like you just never knew a person, and then all of a sudden the scales dropped from your eyes and you saw them as they were. Okay, cool, but I don't want that.
Like, okay, God.
I don't want God, please keep him as my friend.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna casually be involved with friends to lovers. And again, because I'm breaking the rules, forbidden love. The ones that you're like, you shouldn't really be with, but
no, absolutely.
I'm gonna casually. Yeah. I love it when it's done well. But
like
I absolutely
ex-boyfriend's dad, please.
Again, how are you involved with your ex-boyfriend's dad and you're 10? Now, if you're 25,
this happened,
and your ex-boyfriend's dad is 40, I feel like I'm somewhat okay with that, but not fully. Not fully okay with that.
Not all of us have great taste. That's okay. We
work in progress
and love everyone as is. Okay, Jodi, if people want to find you on social, if you want them to find you, if you don't want them to find you, you don't have to share anything. But if people are like, I love Jodi and I need to be friends with her, can they find you online?
Yes, please find me online. I don't remember what my Instagram handle is because that's my life. Can I pause and...
It's like at Jodi-Kay. Yeah. Like Jodi-Kay.
See what I'm saying? Oh, okay. All right. If you want to follow me, it's at _ Jodi Kay. That's it. But yeah, definitely follow me. I want to hear your thoughts. I want to talk to people. I'm always like
and
posting.
If you want to find her in person, you can come to the Coconut Creek Recreation Center on Thursdays. And she does her halftime show.
I do.
Don't miss it.
Can we put a clip?
We can absolutely put a clip because you don't want to miss this.
It's good.
It's the highlight of the week.
It really is. It really was. This was fun.
Yeah.
This was amazing. Of course. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. And if you want to listen to this, follow us on all the things. We're on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Instagram, TikTok, at Romance Unleashed Pod. Bye.
Bye.